Question 1 states, a programmer has produced the following pseudocode to output the square root of numbers from 1 to 10. Line numbers are for reference only. So num is declared as real. Num is equal to 1.0. The code, there is a lot of code. Then it gets to the point of repeat. Called display square root of num. Num is equal to num plus 1.0 until num greater than 10. Procedure, display square root BYREF, this num real. Output this num is equal to square root of this num. Output as a square root of this num. End procedure. Okay, we don't understand anything yet, isn't it? Good, don't panic. The procedure is correctly converted into program code. When the procedure is correctly converted to program code, that means there is no error. That is what they mean. No error, correctly converted. If there is an error, it will not be correctly converted. Function square roots. So there is a function that was used here. This function was not declared. Okay, it was not declared. So we are told that is a library function, that is a library. Just call it and contains no error. So that library has no error. It is perfect. The program compiles without error. The program compiles without error. But the program gives unexpected result, but the result is not expected. But there is no error, but the result is not expected. What is the expected result? The question says, a programmer has produced the following pseudocode to output the square root of numbers from 1 to 10. That means the square root of 1 to 10 is the expected result. Is that understood? That means the square root of 1 should be equal to what? 1. Square root of 2 should be equal to what? 1.414. Square root of 3 should be equal to what? Approximately 1.6 something. Square root of 4 should be equal to what? 2. Square root of 5 should be equal to what? 2 point something. Square root of 6. Square root of 7. Square root of 8. Square root of 9. And square root of 9 is 3. And square root of 10 is something. So these are the square root that are expected. So this is the expected output. Are you all following me? So to output the square root of the numbers from 1 to 10. But this code, the question I'm told you that the code has no error. But this program gives an unexpected result. And these results are caused by what? By design error. Explain why the program gives unexpected results. So some of you will be expecting that in pseudocode, you would only be asked to write codes. No, not always. You won't always be asked to write code. At times you'll be given some codes. You may be told that some part is wrong. You may be asked to identify the part that is wrong. You may be asked to correct, or you may be given a question like this that is not wrong, but the result is not what is expected, and asked to explain why it was not expected. Okay, so how do we solve this problem? It's very simple. Now, if you take a look at this problem, so before you solve this problem, we must analyze the code. Maybe you draw a trace table, just analyze the code. When you analyze the code, it makes you understand where the problem is. If you don't analyze the code, just read and don't analyze, you will not see where the problem is. Okay, so let's analyze the code. The first thing, num was declared as real. And num is set to be equal to what? 1.0. So the value of num is 1.0. Now, repeat. Repeat means do it. If the condition is true, exit. If it's not true, continue to do it, isn't it? That is repeat. So call square root of num. So this procedure is called. And the value of 1.0 num is passed as a what? As a parameter. So you now go to the procedure. Are you all following me? The procedure is called, so let's go to the procedure. Now, this procedure has a parameter. The value of num is passed as an argument, isn't it? So this procedure, display num, needs a parameter to be passed, isn't it? And that parameter must be what? Must be a real value. Of course, num is a what? Num is a real value, isn't it? Now, but this parameter is passed by what? By ref. There are two ways of passing parameter in procedures. If you take a look at this procedure, this parameter is passed by ref. There are two methods of passing parameters in a procedure. BYREF, and what? BYVAL. When a parameter is passed by ref, that means the argument passed is modified in that procedure. What does that mean? That means the value can be changed in that procedure. It is similar to a global variable in Python. If you pass a global variable in Python and you now edit the value of that variable in a function, the value outside of the function is also changed, isn't it? For global variables in Python. So this is like similar to the global variable in Python. Is that understood? So I repeat, if you pass a parameter by ref to a procedure, the argument pass is what? Is num, isn't it? The argument pass is modified in that procedure. That means the argument pass can be modified in that procedure. That means the value can change in that procedure. If you pass a parameter by val, if you define a parameter by val, that means the argument passed cannot be modified in that procedure. So let's now analyze this code again to illustrate what I've just explained. Okay. Now, num is declared as real. The value of num is what? 1.0. Repeat. Do it over and over until the condition is what? Is true. Isn't it? Now, call display square root of num. So this procedure is called, and num is passed as what? As the argument. Isn't it? The value of num was what? 1.0. Okay? Now, the value of num is 1.0. Now, display square root is now called. So let's go to the procedure, because this must execute before this is executed. Okay? Now, let's go to this value, to this line of code. Now, this num parameter is passed by ref. Since this parameter is passed by ref, that means the value of num, which is the argument, can be modified in that procedure. Can be modified, although may not be modified, but can be modified. It depends on the line of code. So let's see if it was modified. Okay, good. So let's move forward. Output this num. What is the value of this num? 1. Isn't it? So 1 is outputted. Let me do the output in red. Let me write the output in red. Okay. 1 is outputted. Output this num. This num is equal to what? Square root of this num. That means the value of this num has changed. It has now been modified, isn't it? What is the value of this num now? Square root of this num. Of course, the square root of 1 is 1, isn't it? Isn't it? Fine, it's still the same value, but it has been modified. Let's continue. Output, like I said, I'm matching the output in red, isn't it? So output has a square root of what? This num. So 1 was outputted initially, right? Now has a square root of what? What is this num? 1. Is that understood? Then end procedure. After procedure is end, that is the end of that call. This is the end of this call. Then what is the value of num now? What was value of num? 1. 1 plus 1 is what? 2. So num is now what? 2.0. Is that understood? Num is now 2.0. Now, is num greater than 10? No. Then it starts repeat again. It repeats again. It only stops repeating when it's greater than 10, isn't it? So when it repeats again, it calls what? Display num. What is now the argument? The argument is 2.0. Understood? The argument is 2.0. So let's now go to the procedure. This num is now 2.0. What will it output? 2.0. It outputs 2.0. What is this num? The square root of 2.0. What is the square root of 2.0? 1.414, isn't it? So that means this num is now 1.414. Are you all following me? So output what? 2.0 as a square root of what? 1.414. So this num is now 1.414, right? Then you end procedure. After ending procedure, then what is the value of norm now? 1.414, no more 2.0. Why is it 1.414? Because this parameter is passed by ref. The value has been modified. Are you all following me? Now, norm is now 1.414. 1.414 plus 1 is now what? 2.414. So the value of norm is now what? 2.414. Understood? So now that the value of norm is now 2.414, is norm greater than 10? No, norm is not greater than 10, right? So what happens? It repeats again. It goes back to repeat, right? When it repeats, what does it call? It's called display norm with what? 2.414 instead of what? 3. It goes back again and called display norm with 2.414. Okay, good. So when this was called with 2.414, so that means 2.414 is passed as what? As the parameter, isn't it? Then it outputs this norm. What will it output? 2.414. Okay. When it outputs 2.414, then this norm is now equal to what? Square root of 2.414. So this norm is now, the value has now changed, isn't it? To a smaller value to 2.414, isn't it? Which will be 1 point something, isn't it? So 2.414 now that this value is now less than 2.414, right? It should be 1 point something, isn't it? So that means it outputs as a square root of that value, right? Then as a square root of that value, isn't it? The value should be even be less than what? It should be around 1.4 something, isn't it? Or 1.5. The value is just very less. Okay, fine. You can now see that there is a problem. The intended output is supposed to be what? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. But what is the output? 1, 2, 2.4, isn't it? And less. Then which is the unexpected results? So now that we have analyzed this code, we see where the problem is, isn't it? The problem is because that value is passed by ref and it was modified. Although it may not be modified. So what if you output this norm, another variable is declared in this procedure? If another variable is declared in this procedure, let's assume at this line of code, you declared new as what? As rain. Okay? So instead of using this norm, then you use what? New. Would the value of the argument be changed? No. That was why I said it can be modified. If it was modified, it can be modified, but it may not be modified. Is that understood? So if you have used another variable, the value will not be modified. If you have passed by val, the value will not be modified. So those are two ways of solving the problem. Either you pass by what? By val, or you use a new variable so that it does not modify what? The argument that was passed. Is this understood? Let's take, for example, this was defined by val or was passed by val. Okay? Now, declare norm as rule. The value of norm is what? 1.0. Repeat. Call display square root of what? 1.0. Then 1.0 is passed to this procedure, isn't it? When it gets to this procedure, the value of this norm is now what? 1.0. It displays what? 1.0, isn't it? So it outputs 1.0. So this norm is equal to what? Square root of what? 1.0. What is square root of 1.0? 1.0, isn't it? Are you all following me? What does it output? As a square root of 1.0. So it outputs as a square root of 1.0. Understood? End procedure. After end procedure, that is the end of this call, isn't it? Then it moves to the next line, which is what? Num is equal to num plus 1. What was the value for num? 1.0. Now, our num is now what? 2.0. Num is now 2.0. Is num greater than 10? No. Then what happens? It repeats. Is that understood? Because it's not greater than 10. Now, you are now calling display num with what? 2.0. Okay? Now, it comes to this procedure, isn't it? It comes to this procedure. In this procedure, what is the value of this num? 2.0. What will it output? 2.0. It outputs 2.0. What is the square root of 2.0? 1.414 etc, isn't it? Then that means this num is now what? 1.414, isn't it? So it outputs what? As a square root of 1.414. Is that understood? That is the end of the procedure. That is the end of the call, isn't it? Then it goes to the next line. What is the value of previous num? The value of the previous num is 2, not 1.414. Because it was passed by value. And the value of the argument can never be modified in the procedure. Is that understood? It can never be modified in that what? Procedure. So the value of num still remains what? 2.0. If it was passed by ref, the value of num will have been what? 1.414, because it can be modified in what? In that procedure. Okay? So now that the value was not modified, the value of num is now what? 3. Is the value greater than 10? No. It repeats again. And call display square root with what? With 3.0. Isn't it? It comes with what? 3.0. Is that understood? When you call with 3.0, it comes here. What is the value of this num? 3.0. Then it outputs what? 3.0. Then square root of what? 3.0 is now the out, which is 1.7. Okay, good. 1.7 something or 1.6 something, whatever. Okay, good. So it is 1.732. So that means this number is now what? 1.732. So your output as a square root of, what is this number? 1.732. etc, isn't it? End procedure. When you end procedure, that is the end of your call, right? What is the value for num? 3.0, not 1.732. The value is not modified in the code. So 3 plus 1 is what? 4. Now the value of num is now what? 4. Is num greater than 10? No. It repeats again and call display num with what? 4.0. Is that understood? When you call 4.0, then this num is now what? 4.0. It outputs 4.0. Is this understood? Then as a square root of, the square root of 4.0 is what? Is 2.0. So this num is now 2.0. Then it outputs as a square root of what? 2.0. End procedure. That is the end of the call, right? So the value of num is now what? Is still 4.0. It's not 2.0. It was not modified. Is that understood? It is now 4.0. So 4 plus 1 is what? 5. That's how it repeats until it gets to 10. So this is the expected result. Is that understood, everyone? Good. Now that we understand this, we really understand very well. But if we don't write our answer properly, we have no mark. That is the problem. There's a difference between understanding and writing your answer properly. The question asks, explain why the program gives unexpected results. The question does not ask you to provide a solution. It only says, why is there an unexpected result? You are asked to explain. Don't forget. At least list out your point first before you now explain. There should be at least how many points? 3 points to explain. You have to explain everything as a paragraph, but your explanation must reflect 3 points. So the first point is what? It was passed by ref instead of by val. That is the first point. By ref, you may decide not to write instead of by val. Just write it is passed by ref, or because it was not passed by val. Any of them is correct. But you cannot write both of them as 2 points. Both of them is still 1 point. It's just like word and opposite. In Cambridge, word and opposite does not have 2 marks. They have 1 mark. You can write 2 things, but they mean the same thing. They are just word and opposite. Both will not earn 2 marks. Either you write it was passed by ref, or it was supposed to be passed by val. They are the same thing. So if you like write both, it doesn't mean 2 points. It is still 1 point. What is the second point? Yeah. Arguments, value, arguments. Let me just write arguments can be modified in the what? In the procedure. So what is third point? Then the value of norm, or let me write the parameter is modified. The parameter is modified. Is modified, right? Parameter is modified in the procedure. Yes, parameter was modified in the procedure, isn't it? This norm was what? Was modified, isn't it? Then what is the third point? The value of the argument or the value of norm is what? Is changed outside of the what? Of the procedure. So these are the 3 points. Then you now write these 3 points as a paragraph. Then write the program. So very simple. The program gives unexpected results because the parameter in display square roots. You can see. You cannot just say the parameter because there are 2 functions here. There is a function, there is a procedure. If you say the parameter is passed, are you talking about square or display square roots? Is that understood? So I specify where the parameter was passed because the parameter in display square roots is passed by ref. So what is the effect of it being passed by ref? Or which is what? Modified. Because if it was not modified, it will not give an error. It is not just the fact that it was passed by ref. Even if it is passed by ref and it was not modified, it will not give an error, isn't it? So the unexpected result came because it was modified. So you have to specify that. Because saying that it was passed by ref is not sufficient enough. Because if it was passed by ref and not modified, there will be no problem. Is that understood? So it was passed by ref and also what? Modified. And this modification will cause an effect. And what is the effect? Change the value of what? Norm outside of the function. Is this understood, everyone? Good.